Hello, hello, hello. Greetings and welcome to Storytime with Stephanie. I'm your host, Stephanie Outen. And Storytime with Stephanie is a platform that we have to allow independent, new, and existing authors to be able to share their stories of triumph, of tragedy, of deliverance, of healing. And we always have some amazing, awesome guest authors with us to be able to share their powerful stories. And tonight is no different. So, tonight we have Darren Bennett. Darren's book is I'm My Brother's Keeper. And Darren Bennett is the proud husband of Christine Bennett and father of five amazing children: Destiny, Robert, Dariana, Darielle, and Jael. I hope I pronounced all of those correctly. Darren is the lead planter slash pastor of Calvary Chapel, North Miami, a live teaching campus of Calvary Chapel, Fort Lauderdale. The campus was started with about 15 people from the ground up in Darren and Christine's backyard. Calvary Chapel, North Miami officially launched in April 2019 with 275 people in attendance. And Darren has been in full-time ministry serving in various capacities at Calvary Chapel, Fort Lauderdale, including youth pastor, children's ministry teacher, and mentoring ministry director. Prior to the call to full-time ministry, Darren served as a deputy sheriff for the Broward Sheriff's Office from 2003 to 2013. Darren also has a bachelor's degree in religious science from Liberty University. So we are so excited to have Darren here with us tonight. Darren, are you with us?
I am, and I'm excited to be with you. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction. I was like, who is she talking about that did all of that stuff?
That was you. You did all of that.
Oh, wow. It's good to be on with you.
It's great to have you, Darren. We're so excited to talk about your book, I'm My Brother's Keeper. And I know we have a image of the book cover. There it is. Such an awesome cover. And I want to first tell me what is depicted in this cover. What do people see in this cover?
Yeah, so at the top, what you're going to see there is me and my brother, Shannon Bennett, who is now deceased since April 3rd of 2020. I'm pinning his badge on him. He is becoming a deputy sheriff for Broward Sheriff's Office here in South Florida, one of the, I believe, second or third largest agencies in the United States. And so that's the top picture. And on the bottom, the left and right is just young Darren and young Shannon, just two little guys growing up together. We were not twins per se, but as you can see, we were dressed alike. My mom raised us as if we were twins. We were 14 months apart, so close to Irish twins. And we kind of told everybody we were twins because we looked alike, dressed alike, lived together for so many years. So I believe that's what I want to portray on the cover there was just the relationship of me and Shannon.
Yeah, and you definitely did that. And you did really, I thought you were twins at first. So as I was reading the story, I'm like, okay, they're not twins, but you look so much alike and you grew up so very close.
Yes.
And so I can imagine just even as you were writing this story, and we'll share with the people, in regards to your brother's life and, what ultimately happened to him. But I'm sure that it was overwhelming, brought up a lot of emotions for you. Tell me a little bit about kind of your upbringing, you and Shannon, and you had some other siblings as well, correct?
Yes, we did. So me and Shannon were born into a already established blended family. My mother and father came together, interracial couple. So my mom's Italian, my dad is Black. That makes us Blood-Italian. See what I did there? But my dad had two kids already established. My mom had two kids from a prior relationship as well. They came together and had me and Shannon. So we were just a blended family being raised in a multicultural neighborhood up in Stamford, Connecticut. And in our household, we never had any concept of who's this color, who's that color. We were just family. Traditional family that sat around the dinner table each night, telling stories, fighting, getting on each other's nerves. And then ultimately, after about 8 years of having that safety net established, that foundation, my mom and dad divorced To this day, I really don't know what happened. And to this day, I probably will never know what happened. My dad is dead, and my mom, she just has her side of the story. And so I just have to take whatever they shared at face value, right? But that tore our world apart. You know, we ended up being brought down to Deerfield Beach, Florida. Me and my brother left my 4 older brothers behind because they were already older, established. They didn't want to leave and come to Florida. So that's where like the cycle of craziness happened for me and Shannon, kind of growing up in now a single parent home, leaving the safety net of what we knew was family and entering into the unknown. And what that did was it just drew me and my brother closer together because literally we were all we had at that point in time. My mom was just trying to work to make ends meet, the night shift at 7-Eleven as a cashier. And we were just trying to get it how we live. So that's really the backdrop of how we came up.
Yeah, so you were always having to be together, supporting each other, taking care of each other because you didn't
Literally.
have the 2-parent household anymore. Your mom was always having to work. And then your bonus siblings, they, I would imagine, left the home when your father and your mother divorced, correct?
Yep. That's accurate.
Okay. Now, I mentioned when I posted initially about your story that the introduction alone like really brought me to tears.
Mm.
And it was such a touching introduction, and really, and even your dedication brought me to tears. And I want to share a little bit from your introduction to the book so that the people understand really what your story is about.
Certainly.
I'll start here. It says, "My aim is to tell a love story of 2 brothers who lived in each other's world from childhood years into young adult years. 2 brothers who eventually went opposite directions but found their way back to each other because of the bond of love. This is the story of how love bridged the chasm between a conservative evangelical preacher and an openly gay police officer. That is my premise for this book. My aim is to highlight the bond Shannon and I had. My aim is to highlight the vast differences Shannon and I had. My aim is to highlight the way love kept Shannon and I together amidst those differences. My aim is to help others who read this book not only grieve with me, but also rejoice in the fact that love truly overcomes lifestyles. I once said to Shannon during one of our many in-depth conversations, I can still love you and not live like you. He liked that concept so much that he posted it on his Facebook page." Okay, I'm gonna stop there because I get emotional. So that line, "I can still love you and not live like you," really it touched me because years ago I worked in an environment with individuals, adults and children, who were infected and affected by HIV and AIDS.
Mm.
And it was I was like early 20s. I had just graduated from college. It was like my first real job out of college. And I met a gentleman by the name of Joe, and Joe was openly gay. And that was my first experience with someone who was openly gay. And he had HIV. And as a believer, you know, I was kind of like, I don't know, like, am I supposed to, you know, care about him? Like, how do I treat him? This is weird for me. I literally didn't know how to respond.
Mm.
And he was the most wonderful person. And he said, "You would treat me like you would treat anyone else who wants to be your friend." And when I read this line, it reminded me so much of him, because even though I did not believe in his lifestyle and I didn't live that lifestyle, I loved and adored that man. He became one of my closest friends. He was the most wonderful person. And when he passed away, I was one of the only people outside of the family that the family called. I was at work and they asked me to come and be at the hospital with him as he was transitioning. And so this story, in essence, is so meaningful to me. It means so much to me that we as believers in Christ, we don't have to understand or even like the way that someone lives, but it does not mean that we cannot love them and that we should not love them. So I want to hear a little bit more from you about kind of, as you and Shannon were growing up, what was the point where he may have come into the realization that he was gay? And then how did he share that with the family?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Shannon, having conversations with him, I think he knew as early as you know, probably 13, 14 years old, kind of going through the struggle, right? And looking back at that time period of our lives, um, he became a really angry person at that point. And I believe, and he would probably tell you if he was alive, that anger was fueled by a struggle,
Yeah.
trying to figure himself out, understanding what society said he should be, but not being able to conceptualize the feelings that he had inside of him. And so grappling with that created that angst inside of him, right? And then probably up until he was, I think, 18, 19, he finally came out, but he came out in different ways.
Okay.
He was actually exposed through a phone conversation my older brother overheard, and this was back in the days. I hate to age ourselves here, but there was no cell phones, right? So you had landlines, and if you had a landline, if there's 3 or 4 of them in the house,
Yep.
somebody could pick it up and listen to the entire conversation. That's just how life was back then. If you're watching this and you have no clue what I'm talking about, you're extremely young. And sorry, not sorry, but that was the good old days.
Yeah, it was.
So Shannon's having this conversation, and my brother John heard it, and he started to press him about it. And so Shannon tried to deny, but eventually he just knew that he had to share. So he called my mom first and shared with her. I had already kind of had a hunch because John talked to me, so I was kind of prepared. He told my father. He actually told me. I feel like, if I can recall, because we're going back, this is so many years ago.
Yeah.
I feel like I was the last one he told, and I feel a type of way about that, because I should have been the first one he told, because me and him were the closest, right? But I think because I was such a guy's guy, growing up, I was a tough guy. I was, I don't glamorize this, but I was kind of like a street dude, what I mean? And so, and a woman's man, so I was the opposite of everything that he would have thought would have accepted him. And so, I remember when he told me, even though I knew, I kind of had a suspicion based on what my older brother said, I looked at him. I said, okay, I need a minute. And I left the house. I walked all the way down the street and just processed what I knew was true now at this point. Already suspected it, but now I know it's true, right? I then got back into the apartment, made my way up the elevator, came to the door, walked in, and just hugged my brother. That was my response. I don't know what his angst was as I was processing and walking around the neighborhood. It had to be about a 15-minute moment. And so I don't know if in his mind he's like, I lost my best friend.
Yeah.
But in that 15 minutes, I just needed time to just say, okay, nothing's gonna change. I just know who he is now.
Right.
And I hugged him. I told him I accepted him, and we kind of moved from there. Things changed, however, when I really came into a full, honest, real regenerated relationship with Christ. That was when I kind of got pharisaical, and you'll probably touch on that in the book too. I don't want to get too ahead, but the chasm was created at that point, because I felt like it was my job to now kind of correct him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And bring him over to the side of righteousness, because I was so righteous at that point. I went from being a little street dude, and now, God saved me and I'm living right. And
like, oh, you got to live right too.
Yeah. But I went about it the wrong way.
All right, we're gonna hold that for a minute.
Yeah. Pump the brakes.
So tell me about, in your household, did you all grow up Christian? Was religion a factor in your household? Not at all.
No, we were not cut from the covenant cloth. We were actually we were a CEO family, Christmas and Easter only Catholic family. So that we went on the holidays. if that. And so when we moved to Florida, when I was 16, I had a spiritual experience that led to a greater reference of Jesus, but it did not lead to a true relationship with Jesus. So I was at a funeral of a friend of mine that died, young kid, 15, and so at the funeral, the pastor did his best to share the message of the gospel, but the way it translated in my mind was, you just need this fire insurance. You don't want to go to hell, so heaven's a better alternative. But I didn't hear a lot about the Christ of heaven, and I didn't hear a lot about the grace of God that would change everything in my life. I just got scared into heaven, so I went up and I raised my hand, and I got saved. So then I asked my best friend, my current best friend now, what do I do now? Because his daddy was a pastor, and I share about that experience in the book too. It God bless him, he's now deceased as well. My first pastor. It wasn't a really good, healthy, and church wholesome experience, but it was a church experience nonetheless. And my brother was a part of that as well, and it damaged us more than it helped us. So our first reference to a relationship with Jesus was not a healthy one or a helpful one. So that's our spiritual backdrop. So it wasn't until I was 26, 27 that I went into a desperate season of my life where I just kind of messed a lot of stuff up. And I cried out to God from Shannon's spirit bedroom floor. He took me in when I was at my last. And I lived with him when I was at my lowest. And that's when I came to know Jesus Christ. And he transformed my life in that moment at age 26, 27. So that was basically the spiritual backdrop.
Okay. And so when you kind of went through that experience, where your initial experience of coming to salvation out of fear, not necessarily out of a true desire to have a relationship with Christ, and you said Shannon was a part of that experience too. So did he also give his life to Christ out of fear? What was his experience?
So he came to the church on the heels of me inviting him over. And I don't think he came over out of fear at all. I believe he truly did put his faith in Christ. I have like letters that he wrote. I call them receipts, where he would journal to himself. And he talked, to a degree about how he wanted to kill himself at one point because of his sexuality and the struggle. And this is when he was out and open, and he still struggled with, the way society would view him and the acceptance and so forth. And he wrote a letter to God saying, Lord, you saved my life. I wanted to die, and you showed me life. So he truly did, for a season. He actually tried to suppress his sexual desires to actually live right with God and walk right with God. And I believe it was the church experience that he had, which was again unhealthy, that vexed him, and it rubbed him the wrong way. And he said, well, if church people are going to live like this and be hypocritical, why can't I be true to who I am and live like I want to live, yet and still love Jesus? And so it was at that point that he and another good friend of mine, both who were in that same experience and both who were experiencing same-sex desires, made up in their mind, like, no, yeah, we're gonna live this thing out through and through, and still love and hold on to Jesus. But this is who we are. This is our lifestyle. The church is hypocritical. We're gonna be real about us. And so that's when he kind of went full on into the lifestyle.
Okay.
He said he would never walk into a church ever again. He did. He started actually coming to our church in Miami Gardens shortly before he passed away. I got him to come to some outreaches. So slowly but surely, he seemed to be coming back to at least getting into a space where he felt accepted in the church. He would always play with me, like, bro, when I come back, you're gonna make me a deacon, or and he would always end his text messages to me like, prodigal son, you know what I'm saying? So he always felt like, at some point he was coming back, but he was just out there. Shannon was doing Shannon, and Shannon was unapologetically Shannon. And if you knew him, you loved him.
You love him. And so at that stage where he decided, I'm going to live this thing full on out, and I'm going to be authentically Shannon, who I am, and I'm going to live this lifestyle of an openly gay man. What stage were you in your life, and kind of how did you view him at that point where he was so open about his sexuality?
Yeah, so at that point in time, I was getting ready to get married, remarried. I went through a divorce. I was getting remarried, I was in ministry at that point. I was leaving BSO. He and I both worked at the Broward Sheriff's Office together. I'd gotten him
Okay.
hired. Um, I actually encouraged him at one point, like, man, be yourself here. Like, this agency is not going to judge you. Don't be afraid to be who you are. These are good people. And truly, BSO, in law enforcement in and of itself, they're human beings. You know what I mean? Like, you see them with the badge, but it's a big family, right?
Mhm.
And I can say that now, even with certainty, because I'm a chaplain back at BSO, right? And so I'm still in the thin blue line community. So anywho, I always accepted him at that point.
Mhm.
It was just once I started forming a deeper understanding of the Bible, and I started to move up the ladder, so to speak, the chain, the org chart of ministry. Now I'm becoming a youth pastor, and they're getting ready to prepare me to be a church planter. I started to feel like I needed to push away a little bit, and create a separation. And I'm not sure why my mind told me that. And it created a lot of tension between Shannon and I. And again, that's where that bridge and that chasm started to kind of shape itself. I started to kind of beat him over the head with scriptures that I was learning, as
Mm.
opposed to loving him with the scriptures that I was learning. Um, and that's where we had a breach in our relationship, and some really like tense arguments about faith, and it was rough. It was a really rough season.
Mm. Where was your mom kind of in this, and this process after he had come out, and here it was, your faith was growing stronger, your understanding of Christ, the scripture was becoming stronger. Where was your mom in this process, and how did she work it all to try to bring you two together, to have commonality around your thinking at all?
No,
No.
no, no. She
Mama was like, I'm staying back.
yeah, that was the best place for her to stay.
Mm.
When it came to me and Shannon, like it was me and Shannon. We had a bond that nobody could understand, and we could literally fight each other, and duke it out. The moment anybody in that moment tried to step in, we would literally turn against
Oh
them.
god, start fighting them.
Right. Like, literally, we could fight each other, and somebody could be on Shannon's side. Hey, leave him alone. And then Shannon would like, hey, whoa, 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 you stay out of this. This is between us. That's how close we were. So my mom kind of stayed back when it came to that. She was neutral in a sense, but she had accepted Shannon. There was no issues with her and Shannon. She already had a son that came out years prior to that, so
Okay.
she understood the lifestyle, and so she never pushed back on him at all.
Okay.
But she never pushed on our differences either. She kind of just stayed neutral and let
Mhm.
us kind of tease that out ourselves.
Mhm. So let me ask you this question, because I know a lot of times people think um, that they believe you cannot be born gay.
Hmm.
Something traumatic must have happened. Maybe you experienced something, saw something. Is there anything that Shannon may have shared with you in regards to um, where he felt these sexual desires were coming from? Or do you know if he did experience anything traumatic that would have brought him in or opened the door to his sexual desires for same sex to enter in?
So theologically, where I stand, Psalm 51 tells us that we're all born into sin, shaped with iniquity. Now, God, He makes us good. He fashions us together in our mother's womb. So the way He created us is exactly the way we're intended to be. So you think about someone that may be born with cerebral palsy and so forth and so on. God didn't make a mistake. God doesn't make mistakes in that way. What happens is the moment we hit this world, which is a fallen world, some semblance of fallenness or brokenness hits us. So um, I was born with sexual issues, just like Shan was born with sexual issues. The difference is my sexual issues were filtered toward the opposite sex.
Right,
His just so happened to be filtered toward the same sex.
right.
And we had that conversation and I shared that in the book. I'm like, bro, I'm just as much of a sinner as you are. I just choose to not indulge my sin. But I have the proclivity, and I'm just going to be real and frank here and raw. Um, I, every beautiful woman that passes by me could be a potential sexual toy
Right.
in my mind. right? And that's sinful. I was born that way. That's my struggle, right? And so for Shannon, I go back and look at pictures of him when he was 2 or 3 years old, and he's doing
Oh wow. Okay. Okay.
like that was it was in him.
Yeah.
He played with Barbies when I was playing with GI Joes
Okay.
before traumatic experiences happened. You understand what I'm saying? Like, and I'm telling you from somebody that grew up with it. So
Yeah.
it doesn't always have to be a traumatic experience. It's just it's a sin issue that happens on the inside of us. And so there's people that are born with this desire, and in the same way, I have to say no
Yes.
and suppress my desire to be a womanizer, which I was, and stack bodies and have sex with every beautiful woman I see. Is the same thing that someone with the same sex desire. You have to suppress it and see Christ, savor Christ, as more supremely valuable than that which vies for your affections every single day. And so the same goes for the alcoholic, the same goes for the drug addict. Like, everybody's got their vice. Everybody does. And so you can't sit up there and throw a stone at somebody with your right hand because he's
Yes.
struggling with same-sex desires while you're clicking on pornography with your left hand.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying?
Whew.
And so the cross levels us all out.
Yeah.
And so, yes, Shannon did have a traumatic experience, but he was already posing like a female before he even knew what he was feeling.
Right.
So
Right.
if that helps make sense in terms of like his
It makes it makes total sense to me, and I thank you for clarifying that, because I think it helps, other people to understand um, that it is it's a matter of the spirit as well, right? And when we are born, we are now exposed to the spirits, enemy spirits that try to come in and put us
Mhm.
in a place of being outside of the will of the Father, right? And so we have to be built, that our spirit man has to be built stronger. We have to ensure that we do what we need to do to fight against sin, to fight
Yeah,
against those things that
yeah.
are outside
And
of
I'll,
God's
I'll,
will.
I'll I'll take it even a step further. I'll go a little deeper than that.
Yeah.
Him and my good friend, who they both again struggle with the same sex desires,
Yeah.
and they were in the church doing the best they could to try to suppress it. Right? They went up for prayer several times for deliverance, like pray the gay away.
Yeah.
And I kind of touch on that in the book. It's like, okay, God, if you want this gone, if this is a lifestyle that you find abhorrent and it's unbiblical, we're coming up crying out, God, like, can this pastor lay hands
Yeah.
and can it go away? And for some reason, it just did not go away. The gay wasn't prayed away. So it's something that, again, like, I I've prayed, God, like, take the desire for pornography and womanizing out of me, and let it go away forever. Like, because I got to the point, I'm like, I'm so sanctified and saved where if if I lose the desire for womanizing and porn, like, I'll be like literally walking on cloud nine. And
Yeah.
I heard God, not audibly, but in my spirit, saying, that's exactly why I won't take it away, because I
Woo.
need you to stay humble and stay at the feet of the cross and depend on me every single day. So when you wake up in the morning, you're not thinking about Darren in his own strength. You're thinking about God in your strength. I'm walking this thing out. And in my weakness, God is strong. So the same thing that I asked God to deliver me from, and he said, nope, I'm going to leave it on you so you can depend completely on me. Otherwise, your pride will cause you to actually walk away from me.
Yes. Ooh, that thorn in your side to keep
Yeah.
you humble. Oh God. Look, whoever's watching live, you need to be sharing this out. You need to share it out. Tell your friends to come on. And when you watch it on the replay, I'm gonna say run that back several times. Because
Run it back.
you said a whole word and then some right there, Darren. I
Amen.
appreciate that candidness, that transparency, because there's so many people who believe, and at one point I was one of those people that believed that people being gay and homosexual, it was the greatest sin there is. I'm like, sin is sin is sin is sin is sin. Sin is sin, and we are born into sin,
Yeah.
right? And so we got to be careful, right? Trying to say and be judgmental of one person's sin when we are living in sin ourselves. So I thank you for sharing that, because that right there will break somebody free. Yeah.
Do you know that the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah wasn't necessarily the fact that they were doing homosexual practices, but the actual sin was pride and selfishness,
Yes.
and then it led to their self-indulgence. And so again, we got people that are like quick to bomb the gay people because
Yes.
they thought God bombed Sodom and Gomorrah.
He
No,
burned down all of Sodom and
right.
Gomorrah
The
because of
initial issue
right.
was the DNA of sin, which is pride that leads to self-indulgence and selfishness, and then that's where the activity happened. So again, we've got to be careful to treat people of the same-sex desire and the same-sex struggle as if they're the abominable snowmans.
Darren, we're gonna have you back on here to do like a Bible study because that
I'd be honored to. I'd be honored to do it.
that's so good. Thank you for that. Oh my gosh. Okay. Let me see.
All right, back to the book.
Yeah,
well, actually, that's all in the book. Actually,
it is all in the book. But let's see. Let me see. Okay. Oh,
we go deep.
We go deep. What I want to do is kind of fast forward us now to the point where Shannon is in law enforcement, and he's living his life. You're living your life, and here you are. You are pastor. You are still brother. You are still son. You are husband. You are father. You are all these things. And I love when you talk about the relationship actually between Shannon and your children. That just tell the people about that relationship because it's so beautiful to know, an uncle who loved his nieces and nephews so much, and they love him as just Uncle
Deeply.
Shannon, regardless. Tell us a little bit about that, and we're gonna then step into, the point where he is in law enforcement and contracts COVID.
Yeah. I mean, it was a genuine loving relationship. Shannon treated my kids and my brother's kids as if they were his because he just didn't have kids. And he had reconciled that, he eventually would want to adopt. Obviously that didn't come to fruition because his life was cut short, but they would literally have sleepovers. He would call me like, hey, send me my nieces. You know what I mean? I'll bring them to Disney World, and he would do that. He would literally go to Connecticut to see my brother John's kids. And they had a bucket list every year that every time he showed up, they would fulfill their little bucket list. And so they absolutely adored him. And he adored them. Then he would fly out to California and see my nieces down there. And he was just that family guy. I mean, he set an example and a model for me. Because again, I was so busy all the time. Matter of fact, he pressed on me one time real bad. He's like, bro, I find it to be a shame that I got to make an appointment to speak to my own little brother. Because I was just that busy. And so I was like, it's kind of sad that that's the case, and I'm not gonna let that be the case anymore. And so he taught me how to really put family first. Mind you, I'm supposed to be this guy that's going to be a up and coming pastor, and all about family. But meanwhile, I'm ignoring like family because I'm trying to become a pastor. You get what I'm saying? So, make that make sense. Like I was obviously never ignored my direct family, but again, you've got brothers and nieces and nephews, and they love me too. But they just kind of got used to the fact that, oh, Uncle Darren's busy.
Yeah.
Well, no more. No, that's not the case. I mean, now since Shannon has died, I've kind of taken on the mantle, and I try to reach out and text daily and just do as best as I can to step out of my busyness and into their lives the way he would have wanted me to, because I know he would press me if I didn't.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Now, he did have an opportunity to have a partner in his life, right? And so tell us a little bit about, if it's okay, if you can share, in regards to his partner, because you talk about it a little bit in the book as well. The partner that he had in his life even prior to passing away.
Yeah, they were freshly engaged. And had he lived, it had been 9 months or so prior to the wedding is when he passed. And so, he loved his partner. They had a desire to start a family and eventually again, adopt a child or so. And that created a point of tension. And we talk about that in the book as well. And so I'm not sure if you want to step into that. And so, it was one of the hardest conversations I've had to have with him. which was, Darren, I want my nieces to be in the wedding and walk in the wedding. And mind you, they were teens at the time, so they're under my roof, under my direction, my authority. And again, because of my conviction. So here's where we had already kind of made up, and I'd already apologized to him for how bad I had treated him. And I actually built the bridge back into his life. I started to serve him. I started to go hang out with him in places where you normally wouldn't hang. I started to take the coats of his friends that were in the lifestyle when they'd have parties. I would go to his parties. I didn't engage. I was there just to be present. I'm like, well, if Jesus went and partied with sinners, and his whole thought was to win them over. I'm like, look, if I could win my brother over with love. And again, I started to, get him back into a space where he was comfortable asking me a lot of hard theological questions, not to trip me up, but to get understanding as to, his struggle and his lifestyle. And he started to share my sermons on his Facebook page. And that was broadly people who were essentially in that lifestyle, and they're listening to me. So I'm like, okay, I think we're winning here. Right. And so with that relationship being restored, because of the way I started to love him like Jesus would love him, instead of beat him over the head with the Bible, he felt comfortable enough to come to me about the wedding. And he said, look, do you think the girls could walk in? I said, man, look, my convictions are my convictions. Of course, I can love you and yet still not live like you. I'm not going to cave in on what I feel. And so having them walk in the wedding is an affirmation of something that I don't believe in. I love you. I believe in you. I don't believe in the lifestyle that you're living. So therefore, I can't affirm that, because he didn't ask me to officiate it, because he already knew better. But it was hard for him to ask, to hear me say that the girls couldn't walk in it. So that was hard for him to hear. Now here's a very polarizing type situation. Now, what I did tell him was, after I got wise counsel from pastors of mine, I said, I will attend. Now, there's a pastor that recently has gotten completely lambasted from Christians and he's a theologically sound, widely known pastor. And he took that same stance. He's like, I believe it's okay to attend the wedding of someone that's in your family, and they're of the same sex persuasion. And as long as you're not necessarily affirming it, you're not buying them gifts to say, hey, I'm putting a stamp on approval. I'm just present in the moment because I want to love you enough to say, hey, I'm here for you. Right. I took that position. And I knew that a lot of people wouldn't understand that position. I'll go as far as even say my wife's conviction and her conscious conviction was not there. She said, well, Darren, you can go. I'm just not there yet. And so I will not attend. But that didn't divide our family. We just understood emotionally, like, this is just a decision that I felt I needed to make. So I didn't get put in that position, because of course he would die 9-10 months prior to that happening. But that was me saying, hey man, I'm willing to meet you in the middle. I'm not going to have my girls walk in the wedding, but we'll be present in the wedding, and to love you through that moment. And so that was a hard situation for us. But he did understand, and he did respect that. But I remember having to tell him that with tears in my eyes, because I knew it would be hard for him.
Were the girls allowed to attend?
They would have been able to attend, but unfortunately it never happened.
Okay. So let me ask you this, because a lot of times I experienced something similar with, again, because of the environment that I worked in my 20s, where there was a gentleman who worked there, and we were coworkers, and we grew very close. We were in a very high stress, high tension environment, and of course we became close, as coworkers. And so when he was going to get married to his partner, it was the same thing. I was so convicted. I was like, Lord, I don't know. I don't know if I should attend, because if I attend, then I feel like I'm supporting this. And, I couldn't, in that point in my life, say I support this. And it was one of my other coworkers who was a good friend that was like, you can still be there, but not necessarily, like you said, affirming the relationship. And I went back and forth a long time about it.
It's hard.
It was very difficult. I had to see him every day at work, and he was like, hey, I haven't gotten your RSVP yet. And I was like, I still don't know if I'm coming, right? And I just prayed about it, and I said, Lord, lead my heart in the way that you would have me to go. And so I ended up attending the ceremony, I didn't attend anything outside of the ceremony,
Mhm.
but I wanted to be there because he was at that point a friend and I cared about him, you know. And so for people who are in that situation, I think that you do have to just pray and ask the Lord to show you how you should respond in that situation, because everyone's not going to respond like Darren. Everyone's not going to respond like me. You have to be in a place of trusting God to give you the answer for
Right.
how you should move forward. And so now here we are. And so the everyone listening, they already know now that your brother has passed, right? So take us to the point where he ended up contracting COVID-19. Let's hear.
Yeah, that was a few days shy of my birthday in March of 2020.
Mhm.
Um, I remember him being assigned. They pulled all the SROs out of the school. He was a school resource officer at Deerfield Beach Elementary School. So they had reassigned everybody. Now, mind you, the rest of the world is in shelter in place, right? But the first responders don't have that luxury. They can't run and hide from this invisible assassin.
Yeah.
They have to be out there. So I remember him calling me at one point, "Hey man, I'm on the beach. Am I gonna go to hell?" I'm like, "What are you talking about, bro?" He's like, "Yeah, I just told this family that was getting ready to baptize their child that they can't be out here." So I'm like, "Bro, you're not gonna go to hell for telling the family that they got it. I mean, they shouldn't be on the beach."
Right.
But it was Deerfield Beach. It was a very popular beach.
Mhm.
So people were still out there. And he knew everybody. So um, you know, him being out and about on Deerfield Beach, um, we don't know exactly where, when, how. You can't really pinpoint
Right.
that he contracted it, but a few days later he started getting symptoms. And then I remember him literally watching my sermon and texting me, "Hey man, that was a great sermon." Like, "Thanks, bro." He's like, I'm not too far from your church. I'm up the street." I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, I'm in line to get a COVID test. And at the time, they had specific sites. So he was at the Hard Rock, a long line, because everybody was getting tested at the time.
Yeah.
Um, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm waiting to get a test." He's like, "I'm not sure if I'm positive or not." And then days go by. He's like, "Hey man, I'm on my way to the hospital. I'm having heavy breathing. It's hard for me to breathe. I think I might have it, but I'm not sure. It could be anxiety." And so he checks it. He checks into the hospital. We're texting daily, but obviously I can't go see him, which
Right.
was very, very difficult for me.
Yes.
Um, and he did say, "Hey, it came back positive." I'm like, "Okay, all right. Look, by the metrics of science and what they're saying on the news, you're young, you're 38, you're fit. You'll beat this. Don't even sweat it." You know what I'm saying? Um, a couple of days later, he's like, "Man, it's getting hard for me to breathe. I'm gonna stop texting because I'm just tired. I'm beat. I'm exhausted. So I'm gonna fade to black for a little while." I'm like, "Okay, you fade to black, Negro. You come back though."
Come back.
You know what I'm saying? You know. And I remember uh, his partner Jonathan saying, "Hey, they sedated him." And at that point in time, I knew, oh Lord, he's fighting for his life now. I remember crying in my wife's arms, like, my brother's fighting for his life.
Mhm.
And so I was on Calvary Chapel Fort Lauderdale's prayer line, doing worship and prayer daily, just interceding for my brother and worshiping and praying. Um, and it seemed that they were bringing him back. We got reports that his temperature had gone down. They were slowly kind of going to bring him off sedation, to the degree that my family and I were going to parlay money to bring to the nurses to celebrate their victory of bringing him back. That's how positive the reports were coming in. So that Friday morning, we had started to think about, hey, we're going to get some money together. And they even said, "Hey, we'll let you come to the hospital and stand by the door so he can see you guys and have a sense of fight and unction to survive."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Okay, cool. Let him see us. It's gonna be good. We'll bring some food for the doctors and the nurses." Um, that night, 10 o'clock is when I got the phone call that he had passed away. Um, worst call I ever got in my life.
Oh,
And I had to tell my mom the news. I had to walk to the backyard where she was living in our efficiency back there, and tell her that her second son now has passed away. She'd already endured one son that passed away. And then I had to call my daughters, because they were home with their mom at the time. I was co-parenting, and tell them that their favorite uncle passed away. And then live with the fact that my best friend has passed away. And so that's where the story began. And that's where the genesis of me writing this book happened. It was literally in my backyard, in my gazebo. It's a very quiet, serene place where I talk to God, and I just knew I had to write the book, and so I started writing. It was a labor of love. It was a form of healing for me, but not necessarily really healing, because I realized I even now 4 years later I realized that I got really busy to avoid the
Yeah.
pain, and
Yeah.
even today I don't know that I'm truly healed from that
Yeah.
traumatic experience.
And what made it even worse for you after his passing is almost like you didn't really have an opportunity to grieve, because then you had to fight the
Yeah,
Broward Sheriff's Office union.
yeah.
And
There was that. There was the union guy, and then there was the insurance issues,
yes,
um, and yeah, then there was just the Davie chief of police issues. Like, it was just one thing after the next that I'm like, God, like, are you what are we doing? Like, what are we doing here? You know what I'm saying? Like, my whole life I defended and fought for Shannon, and even now he's dead, and I'm
yes,
fighting even harder for Shannon.
yes.
Um, so yeah, it was one thing after the other. It was a circus. So yeah, to try to grieve, it was rough.
Yeah, and that's, in the midst of this global pandemic, it's already, everyone's on pins and needles because you don't know what's going to happen. Here you now lose your best friend, your brother, to this horrible illness, where just the day before they're telling you, oh, it's signs of, he's doing well. And we know, if you've encountered anyone in your life that has had COVID, that one day they could be just fine, the next day they could just go downhill.
Yeah.
And now, you have your church, you have your family, you have all these things. You have to tell your mom that her second son has now passed away. So you're having to now bear her grief with her as well. And now you have all of these other challenges going on, right? And we're not gonna share everything, because you all have to buy his book, I'm My Brother's Keeper, so that you know the full story. But there were just a litany of things that you had to deal with in the midst of grieving the loss of your brother. So how did you, and I know you said you were writing the book, that was a form of release for you. But again, you also said that you were just busy, keeping yourself busy. Was there any moment where you were able to kind of just get away to yourself and have that conversation with God that says, God, I need you to take this burden off of me? The burden of all this stuff going on, the burden of this grief, the burden of now having to experience telling my mom that another one of her sons is dead. Was there any moment where you felt you kind of got that sense of peace by stealing away and having time with God?
Believe it or not, 4 years later, I'm still trying to find that moment, Stephanie. I'm still trying to find that moment. I felt peace when the book came out. I felt like it was a weight lifted off me, because it was like I felt like it was a responsibility and a burden that I owed Shannon to make sure that his story and his legacy was sealed and put out. And I remember literally when the book came out and it dropped, and it was doing extremely well, and it was like an Amazon new release bestseller. Shameless plug, but it was. I mean, it
It
is what
was.
it is. And so I remember looking at his picture in my office at the church. It was a quiet moment. I just remember saying, "Okay, am I done now, bro? Like, am I done?" Because I've been fighting. I fought again every battle to try to maintain his reputation, his legacy, and now to put this book out to tell his story. I'm like, okay, am I done? Can I rest? But even now to this day, like, I'm giving away shoes in his memory every year. Sneakers, Shannon Sneakers Initiative. We launched the Painted Purpose initiative in his memory, to make sure that his memory stays alive, and that's where the next book is going to be coming from, launching from that platform. And so I'm still to this day trying to figure out, when can I actually, like, heal and rest from this traumatic experience. I couldn't see my brother, couldn't hug my brother before he passed away, and I couldn't even get a hug from a normal human being. When others could hug and grieve, I couldn't grieve like nobody can grieve, because the nation told us we can't touch nobody. You know what I'm saying? Like shelter in place, 6 feet. I couldn't hug anybody but my wife.
Yeah.
And no shade to my wife, that her hugs were enough. But
Yeah.
it would have been nice to be able to hug my family. It would have been nice to be able to have my brothers be with me in that moment, of us going through that trauma. So yeah, to this day, I don't know that I'm fully healed because of the experience that I went through. And I wrote chapter number 1, I believe, is "You Don't Get It." because everybody thought that they understood what was going on. No, you can say that you had a family member die, but you can't say that you had a family member die in the midst of COVID that you couldn't see, you couldn't get to, and you couldn't get hugs from anybody while you were grieving. Don't say that you get it, because that's going to get me upset. You don't know what that feels like.
Yeah. Whew. This my prayer for you is that you will be able to get to that place of peace, because you have done far more than what some siblings would do for their loved one, right? For their brother or for their sister. You have gone above and beyond to honor Shannon's memory. You have gone above and beyond to ensure that people know him and who he was, the caliber of person that he was, the things that he did, not just for family, but for the community, right? You've gone above and beyond. You have fought for him. You have fought the good fight. And so my prayer is that you'll be able to get to that place of peace, and that you'll be able to have that rest, and that you can turn over the mantle, right, of all these things to someone else, so that you can truly grieve, mourn, and celebrate
Amen.
Shannon's life, because you deserve that. You deserve it, and you need it, right?
Yeah.
Especially because you are a pastor, you have a church, and you have to be filled so that you can then pour into other people. We know we cannot pour from an empty cup.
That's right. You
And
better
you
preach.
don't want to say it again.
You better preach.
Oh, right. We don't want you to be in a place where you're constantly draining yourself to pour into your congregation and to pour into your community, and you still work as a chaplain with the Broward Sheriff's Office. So you're all over. You got like holes in you pouring stuff out, right? And we need a way to seal that stuff up so that you can then be filled for yourself. So I want to end up praying for you again after the show.
Thank you.
But I want you to tell us, because you gave a great lead in, you have another book that's going to be coming. And I'm going to encourage everyone, you have to purchase I'm My Brother's Keeper by Darren Bennett. You want to purchase that first. You want to read this powerful story of, when I say unconditional love, this is a story of unconditional love of a brother to another brother, an actual sibling. But it is a true message of the love of Christ that will exude through us when we allow it to, right? When we don't allow people's lifestyles, or the things that people do, the things that people say, to keep us in a place of bondage where we break relationships with people, where we stop talking to people. That is not how God wants us to live. We have to be representations of Christ in everything that we do. And so we have to demonstrate love, even if it feels like an unloving situation. And this story of Darren's love for his brother is an example of that true unconditional love that our Father, the Lord Jesus Christ, gives to us. And so I want you to read that book first so that you can then be ready for, Darren, what's the next book?
From Pain to Purpose, Choosing to Fall Forward Instead of Backwards.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So tell us a little bit about, without giving too much, right? Because buy the book.
Right.
What kind of, where are we going to pick up in that book, and what are some of the themes that you're going to share in that book?
For sure. So yeah, it's literally the addendum to I'm My Brother's Keeper. So as you eloquently and passionately stated, and I thank you so much for how you just conveyed that. Please make sure, if you have not done so, purchase the first book, because this is literally the second, I guess you can call it season 2. The cliffhanger, and then now you're kind of picking up to, okay, he passed away. You wrote this book. What happened now? Like, where's Darren? What did God do with this? Or is it just Darren sitting in a gazebo grieving and sharing a plea, right? Because that's how it ends. It's like, this is my plea, this is Shannon's plea, this is our plea, and it's like, and if you know us, you know whose words these are, right? And now, that's kind of like how I ended it. Like, wait, whose words were they?
Yeah.
If you know us, then you know whose words they are, right? And so, but now it picks up from there. Like, okay, here's what God did. And providentially, it took 4 years of me on-ramping to BSO to see that God could indeed turn beauty from ashes, joy to sorrow, right? All things truly do work together for the good of them that love the Lord. And that he can use the comfort, because he is the God of comfort, who comforts us with the comfort that we've been given to then in turn comfort someone else, right? And so you may remember I was supposed to be on your show on August 28th of 2023. And I had to cancel because Battalion Chief Terrison Jackson tragically passed away in the line of duty in a helicopter crash. Well, I knew at some point when BSO invited me back home to be a chaplain, after having worn the uniform, so I know the call, I know the job, I know the people, but I didn't know the purpose yet. All I knew was, okay, I'm a pastor and I can love on these people. But here, wait a minute, I'm actually going through it in the line of duty processions. I'm actually like walking this out myself. And God forbid, there's going to be a moment where I'm going to have to look a family in the eye and tell them, I get everything that you're going through. Remember chapter number 1, you don't get it? No. I do get it now, because I've lived the pain of an in the line of duty death. And so I remember literally having to have that conversation with Terrison Jackson's family, saying like, guys, I get it. Everything that you're feeling, everything that you're going to endure, logistically, the process, what this is going to be like, I walked it out. Let me lead you through this. You are my purpose. My brother died, and I had to endure all of that because of this. You're my purpose. And that was the 39th death of the Broward Sheriff's Office, in line of duty death. And I'm praying every day boldly that it would never turn to 40. But because of the nature of the work that we do, it may probably turn 40. And I'm going to have to look another family in the face and say, I get it. And so that's essentially what the book is about, is how God can turn our pain to purpose. So choosing to fall forward instead of falling backward is the thesis. And I just kind of tease out, what does that look like? Because we're all going to fall. All of us are going to experience pain. And so one of the chapters is everybody hurts sometimes. Another chapter is called Bittersweet Symphony. And so how does God take the tension of life, where you got the strings on a guitar or violin, right? And literally he makes a sweet sound out of tension. But if it's in the wrong hands, if it's in untrained, unskilled hands, those strings can bust. But even if they do bust, God can take new strings, fashion them together, bring enough tension to the degree that he can create a song out of the tension of it. So you got Bittersweet Symphony. Another chapter is called Through the Wire. So it's kind of like focused on Kanye's song Through the Wire, where he literally was able to spit a epic rap song through the fact that his jaw was wired shut. And so he chose to take that situation that was detrimental, where he couldn't speak, and literally he's rapping through the wire, like, you know what I'm saying? And so I kind of write about how, we can choose to let the wire keep us closed, or we can push through that. So there's various different chapters where it's like you're choosing to take the better alternative. You can sit on your stupor of sorrow, or you could say, you know what, I'm going to turn this into something beautiful, because God makes everything beautiful in his time. So I don't want to give too much, but that's the essence of the book.
You gave enough that I'm like, when that book is over, you got to come back.
Oh, I got to, yeah.
I'm like, ooh, and I saw Amaris had put up a message saying, I love the title. It is a powerful title. It is one of those titles that when people see it, they're like, oh, I need to know what this is all about. But remember, you got to buy I'm My Brother's Keeper first, so that you know, because this next book actually picks up where the first book left off. And
we're hoping to get it out by the summer or the fall. I'm actually I'm just completing chapter number 7 now. It's gonna be 7 chapters plus a study guide. And so everything's pretty much almost done. And then of course, once it's written, the editing process has to go forth, and then of course the production and getting it ready. So by God's grace and his providential timing, we're hoping to get it out no later than the fall. But if we're blessed enough, I would love to see it come out in the summer.
That's awesome. I'm excited. I definitely am excited. And Darren, I just appreciate you. And I'll say this, you got to be one of the coolest pastors. You talking about Kanye and his, look, I'm like, he said spit lyrics. Wow.
You got to remember, I ain't really get saved till I was 27. So
I
I got a lot of mileage underneath me.
You're like, I still got some street up in here.
Yeah, I got to suppress it, though. I got to suppress it.
But that's all right. You know what? Because it comes up when it needs to, because there's people that you will encounter that will need street Darren to lead them to Christ, right? We can't
That's my whole
always
church in Miami Gardens right now.
There you go. So this has been an honor having you, Darren. I really appreciate you sharing and sharing Shannon with us so that we could get to know him through your eyes, through your life, and extending your family to us so that we could understand how you all grew up and, you know, kind of where you were and where you are today. And I want everyone that has been watching this live or who will watch this on the replay to lift up Darren in your prayers tonight. Think about him. Think about the things that he shared in regards to not being in that place of peace and rest that he truly desires, and lift up a prayer for him, you know. And if you don't pray, but you all who follow, you know me, I pray, right? But if you don't pray, at least lift up some encouraging words for him, because he has done so much great work and continues to do great work to make sure that Shannon's legacy lives on, and that the work that he's doing now, he's going to be able to continue doing it for others. We don't want him to burn out where he can't continue doing the work, right? We need him to be, you know, fit, mind, body, and soul, so that he can continue to comfort those who are going to walk through, you know, some of the same experiences he has. So, Darren, any closing words? I want you to share how people can find you, right? So how they can connect with you, and anything else upcoming that you might want to share with the people.
Love you to connect with me on Facebook. Just search out Darren Bennett, and you can find me there. Follow me, friend request me. You can find me on Instagram, IG, at Darren Bennett 82. Or if you're on TikTok, you can find me at PDB_82. PDB_82 on TikTok. Put a lot of content out there. And so essentially, again, the big up and coming thing is the Pain to Purpose Project, the initiative. It's a new LLC where, again, we're continuously trying to give out shoes and sneakers in Shannon's name. So we'll be taking more donations once we hit the fall, because we typically give out shoes during December at Deerfield Beach Elementary School. So we're trying to hit all the schools in Deerfield. We want to go way bigger than we did the last 4 years. We kind of centralized it at Deerfield Beach Elementary, but we want to try to go bigger in Shannon's name. So be on the lookout for that, because we would love to have you contribute and donate toward that end, so that we can put a brand new, fresh pair of fly kicks on the feet of the kids that need it in Shannon's memory. So that's up and coming. And of course, the book prayerfully will be dropping in the summer, the fall. If you would love to check out Calvary Chapel North Miami in the beautiful city of Miami Gardens, we would love for you to check us out there. The address is 3918 Northwest 167th Street. That's Miami Gardens. It's sandwiched right between St. Thomas University and Florida Memorial University. You can't miss us. We're right off the 826. You can literally see our marquee if you're going west or east on the 826. So join us on any given Sunday. Check out our website, www.calvarychapelnorthmiami.org. And we'd love to have you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Darren. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. I thank everyone for watching. Those who will watch on the replay, those who will listen through the podcast. You can find us on all of your major podcasting streaming platforms. Storytime with Stephanie. You'll see my face and you'll know that it's me, because there's other ones out there, but there's only this one. So you want to make sure that you stay tuned with us. We have some other amazing authors to come sharing their stories. We air live the second and fourth Monday of every month when we are in season, and we have so much more to come. So Darren, I thank you. And that's PDP as in Pastor Darren Bennett. So you understand, you know, he got to have his initially like PDP, because, you know, that's still the street side of him. So thank you, PDP. Thank you, PDP, for being here.
Thank you, Stephanie.
I appreciate you so much. Thank you all for joining us tonight. So Darren, I'm going to say good night to you.
Take care. God bless you guys.
Yes. And everyone, I want to say thank you again for joining Storytime with Stephanie. Be sure to follow us on our YouTube channel. It's Storytime with Stephanie. Follow us on all of your major podcasting streaming platforms as well. And I'll just leave you all with this from Darren's story, that love always wins. So keep that in mind as you're facing any challenge. Love always wins. So good night, everyone. We'll see you next time.